Welcome, everyone. We're here for our May regular meeting. Since our April meeting, several things have happened. First, Justified won the Kentucky Derby. The Water Department had a special presentation for Drinking Water Week to release and make official our tap water as Frankfort on Tap. And we're also in the period of graduations. So I thought of my own school alma mater, which is Non Scala Sed Vitae, which is not for school but for life, and the idea of you're not learning just for being in school, but for how you apply it to life. So with that, I'll go ahead and introduce myself, Anna Marie Pavlik-Rosen, Chair of the Frankfort Plant Board. To my right, Walt Baldwin, our Vice Chair. Secretary-Treasurer, Dawn Hale. Board Member Ralph Ludwig and Steve Mason. And our attorney for the board, James Liebman. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes from the April 17th board meeting. Has everyone had a chance to take a look at those? And would someone like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. Item number 2, accept electric, water, and cable financials. Katrina Cummins will present to us.
Good evening. The financial package starts on page 20 of your board package. And while you are turning to that, just for your information, the auditors did arrive yesterday. And so far so good. They've just been going through general, intro kind of questions and standard fraud questions, that kind of stuff. So they may be reaching out to you all for questions, or you may see an email or something. So it's just to let you know that they're here. They probably will only be here through tomorrow. They're thinking that they'll be done, and they can finish up in their office on Thursday and Friday. So on page 20. This is the statement of net position for as of April the 30th. The first column of numbers is fiscal year 2018. Line 60 is total assets of almost $173 million. And line 115, total liabilities of $85 million. Line 150 is total net position of $87.7 million. Add the total liabilities and net position together, and you get total liabilities and net position on line 155 of just under $173 million. The next page is the cash investment schedule, which is required per our investment policy, and it's just a breakdown of restricted and unrestricted cash and investments. So line 50 shows our total restricted cash of $1.3 million. Line 95 shows unrestricted cash of $21 million. Add those two together, you get line 100, total restricted and unrestricted cash of $22.6 million. The next section is investments. Line 135 is total restricted investments of $9.3 million. Line 145 is unrestricted investments of $118,000. Add those two together, and you get line 150, total restricted and unrestricted investments of $9.4 million. The next page, page 22, is just a schedule of all of our debt, all of our bonds and leases and KIA loans. The balance as of April 30th is $42.8 million, and we have just over $5 million worth of payments due within the next year. The next page, actually let's go to page 24. Skip a page. That's the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. It's the company-wide detail. So all divisions and departments rolled up into this one financial statement. We'll look at the year-to-date actual column, which is the third column of numbers. Line 20 is total operating revenues, $84.7 million. Line 50 is total operating expenses of 60 million. Net those two, and you get line 55, gross contribution, which is 23.9 million. And if you go down to line 275, that's your total general and admin expenses of 18.8 million. Line 345, total revenue, or total other revenue, sorry, is just under 2.5 million. If you take your gross contribution, subtract your general and admin, add your other revenue, and you get line 350, net contribution for the year, 7.6 million through April 30th. Pages 25 through 38 is that same data, just sliced and diced into the different departments and divisions of the company. So if you skip over to page 39, it's our cash activity summary, which details out all of our bank accounts and all of the ins and outs of each of those bank accounts. Page 42 it shows that if you look at, well, on page 39, if you look at the O&M section, which is the third grouping, total EFT bank transfers is 6.7 million. And the detail of that is on page 42. Shows the detail of what makes all those EFT transfers. And then on pages 43 through 77, that shows the detail of the accounts payable check runs, which is 2.4 million. Actually, I think I just said the wrong number, because that includes, no, that's right, 2.4 million. And then pages 78 through 80 is our impress checks, just primarily customer refunds, and that is 18.7 million that checks we wrote this month. Any questions? We're working really hard on budget, hoping to get y'all reports by the middle of next week so that you'll have a couple of weeks to review them and ask questions and stuff before our board meeting with you all, or special board meeting, I guess, to go over the budget.
Do we have a motion to accept the financials? All in favor?
Aye.
Public comment period. Do we have anyone who wants to make a public comment? We'll move on to departmental reports. Do we have any website customer comments?
No, we have no website comments. I talked to Kathy Lindsay right before. We have some exciting things that have happened since last month. Would you mind if Kathy gives us a brief update instead of that? So Kathy Lindsay, our Public Information Coordinator, just going to give us a little update on some of the things that are happening. There are some good news in May.
Thank you. It was already mentioned that we did our launch last week of Frankfort on Tap. We had a nice little event out at the water treatment plant. It was also Drinking Water Week last week, and so we did some other things. We have our, I didn't bring one up here, our water bottles. Ms. Rosen has properly displayed one. Thank you. Besides, we gave them out at the event, and we've been giving them out here in the lobby to our customers. Again, talking about the value of our locally sourced drinking water here that the Frankfort Plant Board provides. We also took them to our school teachers. Last week was also Teacher Appreciation Week, so we delivered bottles to all the teachers at Frankfort Independent Schools and all of the school and staff in the Franklin County school system. We gave out about 600 bottles Saturday at Lakeview Park. They do soccer, YMCA does soccer up at the park, and we had the water monster there. And we gave out bottles and told them to fill them up with our water. And we had the posters that we had out in the lobby all week, again, talking about the value of FPB tap water, Frankfort on tap. So we've had some good success. We've given bottles to the King Center, to our Head Start group here in town, also to our civic clubs, and we're going to have bottles at a chamber golf scramble and also at the Rotary Golf Scramble. And then we have them just to give throughout the year, again, to promote the value of our water. I'll move on to the scholarship program that we talked about last month. We've had 30 applications, and the selection committee is going to be meeting next week to go through those and make our selections. So again, we'll be announcing those at their awards ceremonies, the high school's award ceremonies at the end of the month. I think maybe Frankfort High's is in June. And then we'll also have them here next month to congratulate them and present them just with a little certificate and congratulate them on being our recipient of the Frankfort Plant Board scholarships. Again, those are focusing on students who are focusing on careers in career and technical education, and hopefully we'll be able to encourage those students that, these are students who may not be more apt to go to like a four-year university. These are our career and technical programs, and hopefully maybe it's some that we can get them to come back to FPB and be good employees here, possibly. So working with the Rotary Club here in Frankfort, they have been a big help in getting the applications out, making sure that our counselors are getting them to the right students, and they have gathered all of the applications. They've set up the time for us to meet, the selection committee to meet, and to make those decisions. We're co-sponsoring the Rotary Golf Challenge this year as part of our partnership because all the benefits from that go to the Youth Fund Scholarship Program that the Rotary has. And again, we just like to support the youth in our community. So that golf challenge is on June 15th if anybody is interested in doing that. So I think that's about all I have. Again, we're looking forward to having our students here next month, and I think it's a really good thing that you all decided to do, and I've heard really good things in the community about supporting our students, so thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Kathy. Our next item is the cable department.
Yes, good afternoon. The cable report starts on page 83 of your board package. We continue to be ahead of budget on classic and preferred cable and local phone. We're still a little bit behind in broadband versus the budget, but we've actually, from this month, or last month to this month, we've actually are up 141 customers. Last month I mentioned that the high utility bills and the cutoff might have had something to do with that, and I really think that is part of it. So we're trying to catch back up to, I don't know if we'll meet the budget number out there, but I think we're still looking pretty good. The next page is our trouble call for April, and we're up quite a bit. We're up a little over 40 trouble calls this month. And if you look at customer provided equipment, that's up quite a bit. And we've been going through a process where we're changing out customers' cable modems, that basically their cable modems cannot do the speed that they subscribe to. So that's part of that uptick. Replacing MTAs, those are the telephone devices. We're in the process of replacing the outdoor units and putting indoor units in. The outdoor units are end of life, and they've created their own issue here and there inside the plant. So that's another reason some of these trouble calls are up. And for some reason this month we've had a lot of in-home wiring issues. Don't really know what that's contributed to. So no questions on that. The next three pages are the outages for the month of April. We had 4 outages, pretty common outages. We did have one line that got tore down that we put back up. Power supply, we had a bad piece of coax that we had spliced a couple years back that the splice went bad, so we had to repair it. That is all I have. If there's any questions, I'd be willing to try to answer them.
Okay. Thank you, Adam. The next area is customer service. So Cassie will update us on that.
Good evening, everyone. Customer service is happy to report that we had a total of 389 customers sign up for the budget billing for our Cycle 1. We're still having sign-ups through the end of May for the Cycle 2 customers, and we had 26 of those sign up using the new online portal that we're offering. And then last month, we also touched on the changes we had made to our phone tier and the way we were handling our internal call flow. And preliminary reports from first month of April of 17 to April of 18 show a reduction in wait times of approximately 2 minutes for our customers in the service area. So we'll continue to watch that and hope that continues to either stay level or improve even more. And then the regular reports start on page 88 in your board packet. Any questions?
As far as the number of people who signed up for the budget process, is that an increase from the previous year, or?
We typically have 600 to 700 annually. This is the first year that they've signed up separately because of the cycles and when we did it.
Okay.
So once we get Cycle 2 signed up, we would be able to tell whether it's the same that we've had annually or not.
Good point.
Mhm. Questions? Thank you all.
Thank you, Cassie. Okay. Electrical Department.
Yes, Ms. Chairman, fellow board members, as you turn to page 90, you'll see our SAIDI numbers for the month of April is 29.68. On page 21, our pie chart, you can see your percentages for each type of outage we had. Page 92 will break those outages down to existing numbers, where we had a total of 20 outages for the month. And the page 93 lists the top 10 outages we had with the total customers affected for the month of 300. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Would you say we usually have a squirrel situation each month?
Oh, we always have wildlife contacts every month. It's
Okay.
Some months are worse than other months, but every month there's going to be some squirrels. So,
Okay.
and soon we'll have some raccoons mixed into it, and probably a few snakes and possibly a hawk.
We're accused of bringing those squirrels with us sometimes.
Yeah. So.
They accuse us
But yeah,
sometimes of bringing
if you look at the utility industry, that's your primary. It's trees, squirrels, and storms. That's
And
what
birds.
causes your problems. So.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? No. Okay. Thank you, Scott. Okay. The SEPA update.
Yes. On page 94, 5, and 6, we have the SEPA information. You'll see that on page 95 for the month of March, we lost a little over $8,000 on SEPA. Our total for the year now is we're $5,636 in the black. March over February, we lost, in February we lost $25,000. So we lost less this month. I guess you can call that a positive direction. That was due largely to the energy prices for the month of March were higher than they were in February. We averaged $33.40 a megawatt hour, which was $2.90 increase from February's average price, and the volume of energy that was allocated to SEPA in March was higher than the previous month. So those two together gave us a little bit better month than we had in February. So I will be happy. If you look on page 96, that again gives us our summary over the 21 years we've been doing this. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Guess not. Okay. Next item, KyMEA. I think Doug Brush from KyMEA will give us a short presentation.
Well, Madam Chair, members of the board, thanks for having us here. Wanted to give a brief update on some of the things going on at KyMEA. Two in particular. One of them is we're building our identity. Obviously, a new organization. We have some marketing and branding and those types of things. We wanted to give you some updates on that. And also on our solar PPA, you've been aware of that. It's been going on for a couple of years now, and we're kind of reaching the end, and we wanted to give an update of where those things are at as well. So first of all, building our identity. We had an initiative when we jumped in a few months ago to develop a logo, some branding, some marketing around that, website development. So ta-da, here's our logo. We're very proud of it. This is a lot of thought went into this, and we'll kind of explain parts of it, but we want to identify a couple things. First of all, KyMEA, so we wanted our letters to be prominent so people would recognize us and kind of get the word out that that's who we are. But also we wanted to emphasize municipal power. So that M you'll see is emphasized. It had some a power design behind it. It looks like a sun. So we have an identity of both with municipal power and with our letters, public power for Kentucky. So we think our team came up with a really nice design. We think it'll be unique and identified with us in particular and with our members.
I had one question on that.
Sure.
KyMEA written out above is a small y, but then in the logo it's all capital letters. To me, it's a little bit of a confusion point, but
well, remember, we didn't have a brand before, so we can, if we identify with this brand here and this logo, that's what we'll use going forward.
oh, so you're saying we would switch to using all capital letters? and no
Probably
small
generally.
y?
I guess we haven't really thought through that. The lowercase one is something we'd started with before. So, but remember, we're identifying what our brand is and the marketing piece that goes with it. So, so this is what the term or the logo that we came up with moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
One of the important things about when you develop a brand is the color palette. So our primary color palette, like blue is generally identified with Kentucky, so we had that theme. Our secondary color palette then is the green and the orange below. And the thought is earth, water, air, and fire correlates well with our types of resources, coal and gas, hydro, wind, and solar. So that's the idea of the color palette. And so as we look forward, we have this cubic design you'll notice below that says, discover the power of energy options. So as we move forward in more and more literature, you'll see that as maybe part of the bottom part of a memo, for instance, or a report, and then our logo would be the top part of that report. And we'll have more to share as we develop those, or still under development. But that's the color palette that was put together and how it corresponds to our logo. Working on a website design right now. It's still a work in progress, so nothing to report there. Any comments around the color palette or the logo itself?
Well, I like the concept of earth, wind, fire, and water.
Yeah, I thought it's pretty clever as well for the marketing firm that we're using. They came up with that, and it all really ties together. They really got a good feel for what we're trying to do and how we want to tie that to public power, our members, and also what we're trying to represent for our members. The next one, the topic is the resource needs, type and timing. So you've seen this graph a couple months ago when I presented it, and it's worth kind of showing again. We have resource needs beginning in 2022. And part of those needs is, what do we fill in there? And the board worked on this, and one of the ideas they came up with, and thanks to Frankfort, really was, let's look at renewable energy. So, and I have a timeline I'll show later, but renewable energy has to do with not just solar, but we could look at wind or biomass, and we put it on RFP to look at those different types of resources. The resource that really came to the top in this area, part of the country, is solar photovoltaic. And to give people in the room that haven't seen this before a flavor, you take the irradiance from the sun on silicon wafers on a solar panel, and that's what's called a direct current. So what comes out of there, like the battery in your car, it flows around in a circle as a direct current from positive to negative. So as you need to convert that to an AC current, so it goes through what's called an inverter, and that can put it on the grid. So we need to take that DC to AC. So this is kind of a simplified flow chart that shows how you take it from the sun, PV solar panels or an array, invert it to AC so we can meter it and put it to the grid. So those are the steps of a photovoltaic system. Best locations for solar. NRAIL, who's the National Renewables Labs, prints out a map that says, and obviously you would know that Arizona, Southern California, Nevada, that's not surprising, that's a good place for solar. If you look in Kentucky, you'll notice the western side of Kentucky has better solar on whole as opposed to the eastern side by the yellowish versus the green color. So that's really a better part of the state for solar. We also have different types of technology for solar. So it's not just photovoltaic, but also a single axis, meaning the solar you put on your house where it faces just one direction and doesn't move, or the single axis or tracking system that follows the sun. So imagine the sun comes up in the east, it comes across in the horizon. You would have a system that looks like in the upper left that tracks that solar movement and tries to grab more of this solar power. And what that gives us is extra boost. So if you had a single axis tracking system like I showed before versus this fixed mount where they just face one direction, you get about 25% more energy. And where you get that energy is in the early morning hours and in the evening hours. And of course, we don't have any solar in the early morning from 1 to 5 or in the late evening, of course. But anywhere in between there, as it follows and tracks along, you'll notice an extra boost in the evenings and in the morning. The trade-off is you get more energy, but it costs more because putting that tracking system, there's more moving parts. So that's the trade-off. The site that we've had presented to us is very large. And to give you a perspective on that, it's 1,100 acres, supports up to 86 megawatts of AC, alternating current solar. KyMEA is looking to take 50 megawatts of that. OMU is looking to take 30. To put that in perspective, I thought, well, here's a good one. We're right in Kentucky Derby season. If we look at Churchill Downs racetrack, it's about 50 acres going around from the outside of the track across the infield. So that would be equivalent to 22 Churchill Downs. That's how big this site would be. So imagine parking on the road and looking across there. That's a lot of solar panels to look at. And to put it even better perspective, if we look across the United States right now, there's 2,832 solar sites as of February of this year. And you'll notice most of those sites are very small, maybe 2 megawatts, 1 megawatt, and then you start to reach some more economies of scale where you hit 50. Our site would rank, if it was built today, and compared to all these other ones, we would rank in the top 1.5% in the United States. So our site is very large in relation to all the other sites out there. To give you an idea of what's going on in Kentucky right now, there's only 25 megawatts in the state that is active at 5 different sites. This is utility scale solar. So we're thanks to Public Power, thanks to Frankfort for kind of pushing us this direction, really getting us to look at it. But we think it's a great project, very cost-effective project, and it ranks as going to be one of the best in the nation in terms of both size and cost. So we're very excited about it. To kind of give you an idea of where we're at in the whole process, let's look at the timeline. And this dates back, I called it 22 months, it's probably a few more than that. Back in March of 2016, Frankfort requested the agency, all requirements group, look at renewable energy. So a feasibility study came about that, authorized by the board in May of 2016. So that feasibility study said, first of all, what works in the state? So before we ever went out for an RFP, what works in the state, what types of resources, what's the cost look at, like indicative costs that is, based on some public information. From that, we came along to a report that was issued to the board in November, and so we're following the bottom piece here, in November of 2016. And that report was presented to the board talking about it looks like it is feasible to have renewable energy inside Kentucky. The board authorized a consultant then to move forward with renewable options, go out and prepare an RFP. The RFP was presented to the board. The board voted to do that RFP in January. It was presented to the board in February, and the board authorized it in February to move forward. So that's February of 2017. From that RFP, we had 210 proposals from 38 different respondents. So a lot of interest in supplying that renewable energy. Now, a lot of them really don't qualify for the scale we were looking at, or maybe the cost effectiveness. From there, in November of 2016 or 2017, the AR group was again asked to reaffirm their commitment to solar. So before we spent any more money on consulting, we said, is everybody still in? And so there's a reaffirmation of that, yes, we're in on this project from the AR group. That allowed us to look forward to 2 different projects that were shortlisted. Those shortlisted projects then, the idea was, let's get an LOI from both of them, indicative LOI, to said, what's your project really look like? Are you starting to get specifics? Capacity factor, is the site secured yet? What's the cost going to be? Those types of things. From there, the board authorized me to sign a letter of intent from these shortlisted projects in April. That letter of intent's been signed with one of the shortlisted companies, and now we're in the stage of looking at a purchase power agreement that we're hoping to have done by July. So that kind of gets us to this point. None of this was taken lightly. You'll see there's a lot of research, a lot of board interaction all along the way to get to this point, and that's how it should be. When you're public power and you're laying out a project, the interaction with the board, with the agency is very important, and these are the steps that we went through to get there. Any questions or comments on the timeline? Yes.
I'm not sure if you can answer this, if it would reveal too much, but would this installation be in Kentucky?
Yes.
Okay. And do you think it would be in any of the service areas of the municipals? Or
it won't be inside a service area. It's going to be outside, 1,100 megawatts, right? So
Sure.
it's going to be outside service area, but it won't be right next to town. So, you got to find a flat spot. So one thing about tracking systems need a pretty good piece of ground that's flat so it can follow, so you don't have to do a lot of groundwork to follow.
Okay.
So what the developers do, identify a spot that's that big, that's that flat, and said, this is the best location. So it's generally driven by those parameters,
Okay.
but it is inside Kentucky.
good. It couldn't be, I know you need a lot of area, but rooftops, doing something like this on rooftops?
Well, I mean, rooftop, certainly any member, any customer of our members is welcome to put on their own rooftop.
Okay.
If we were to ever do a rooftop, it would probably be a community solar that would be where participants could buy into a solar project specifically, as opposed to going on top of their rooftop. If they want to go on their own rooftop, they're certainly welcome to do that as well.
Okay. And, in your chart, you mentioned the AR group, so that's a subgroup of the board.
The all requirements group, correct.
Right. How many members are in that, or just?
So there's eight AR members
Okay.
out of 11 that's part of the agency.
Oh, I see. So it's all of those who are all requirements
That's
members.
right.
I was thinking it was
Yeah, sorry, AR all requirements, correct.
right. I was thinking it was a small subset of the board, not specifically just those members, but thank
Right.
you for clarifying that. Seemed like there's one other question. That we put the RFP out in April of 2017, and so it's a year and a little bit later.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that there are any changes in the market that we're not aware of because we've just been focusing in on these? And is there any perspective that?
Well, as we progressed along, there were the tariffs that were put on imported solar panels by the Trump administration. That was certainly a change. I think there's been some, as people look at the tax credits they get, people are trying to understand, how do I get a safe haven? So if you want to get your investment tax credit from the government, you need to have a certain amount of solar in place by a certain time, and that's called a safe haven. And so the developers we work with were working real hard to say, how can I make sure I get the lowest price for whoever's going to be the off-taker by getting that investment tax credit? So a lot of those aren't changes, but those are things that people honed in on as we negotiated these contracts.
Okay, thank you.
I believe I read in the letter of intent that the connection point will be inside KU's transmission system?
Yes, on KU system.
So we wouldn't have to worry about any changes that affect that?
That's right. Yep. Go back. Any other questions, comments? Everybody loves the logo, I take it? I didn't see anybody stand up and start clapping, but I'll assume that was in your heart.
Okay. I know that there are federal incentives. Did the legislature pass any incentives here in Kentucky?
No.
I think not, but,
We're going the other way, I believe.
yeah, I noticed
But if
that.
there's free money out there, we'll take it. But and of course, investment tax credit, we don't pay taxes as you don't as well. So that gets monetized by the developers. So what they can do is said, we'll do a purchase power with them, and then they can take that tax credit and monetize it and pass that savings on to us. So that's very helpful.
So the 30 megawatts that OMU is looking at, will they be purchasing that individually, or are they looking to run that through a separate project via KyMEA, or what's that structure look like?
We haven't worked through all those specifics yet. Yeah,
see.
it gets a little tough to have two different contracts with the developer, but that hasn't been all the way worked through yet.
I see. You have a sense of which way it's leaning, or?
Mr. Musson, do you have a comment on that?
One contract.
We're looking towards one contract, yeah.
I see. So then they would actually be purchasing it as a resource from KyMEA?
Correct.
Yes.
And would there be any other partners other than us? OMU and KyMEA?
No, that subscribes the site for the most part.
Okay.
Now, there's 6 megawatts potentially left, but as they lay out these sites, so they have a piece of ground already in mind. So they kind of draw their matrix, and you're going to need roads that go through there. You're going to need room for those panels to move, places for the inverters, and how you get to a transmission and all those pieces. So they laid it out for 86, but they're happy to say if it's 80 or if it's 86, it doesn't really matter to the developer.
So how does this fit in our portfolio? I think in 2022, we've got, 100 megawatts rolling off with the Dynergy. And between this and the combined cycle, 100 megawatts are looking at, I guess that's 150 to 180 megawatts.
Now, keep in mind, capacity-wise, this only counts about half. So
Okay.
50 megawatts of solar is 25 for...
So that'll get us to 125 megawatts or
Right,
so?
something like that,
Yeah.
Yep. And then, from there, it's you're always looking at your load projections and your membership and those types of things. But it's a good piece of it. In terms of our all requirements, it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of a little under 10% of the energy needs. That's probably a better way to look at solar is from an energy perspective as opposed to
So it looked like from the chart you presented last time you were here that we were going to be reducing the capacity or the availability we'd have of that Paducah peaker. Is that what's going to happen? Am I interpreting that chart right?
yeah, but although we have an option to do that, so every time you have an option, you have some optionality about do you need to do that or not, depending on where loads are. This is predicted to be kind of a hot summer, which I don't know how good the weather people are, but we'll see what load we'll really have out there, because we've had some really mild summers as of late, and I'm waiting for everybody to be kind of lulled to sleep, and all of a sudden we're going to have a peak that we haven't anticipated. So what the hidden loads are out there, we just don't know. So if you look at load forecasting, it's not a precise science because it can't be. It has to do with the number of days of heat, and basically the number of days that on a weekday versus weekend, how many consecutive days build up to that. So there might be a lot of pent-up demand we don't really know yet. Well, we might know something this summer, but we've had a lot of cool summers recently.
So is that what accounts for the dramatic increase in our load this year? There's like a 7% increase in our load from the load data you guys gave us.
Oh,
Is that all because
you mean
it's
the
supposed to be-
projection-wise?
Yeah.
Yeah, all that's always normalized. So under normal weather conditions, here's what it could be. But I don't know if you've done a lot of load forecasting or looked at them, it's always kind of done as a bell-shaped curve.
Yeah.
So you have this projection to set, I think the peaks, let's just call it 100 megawatts right there. If you draw a curve around that, you say, whoops, there's some uncertainty around that curve saying I could be over or under this based on some standard deviations around weather. Very weather-driven because of air conditioning load and residential usage. And those types of drivers are just a big unknown. So you want to plan to be conservative for the simple fact you don't want to have people have concerns about getting their power to them.
Yeah.
That's
It just
kind of
stands out on that load
society.
graph because you've got, a 3.75% decline in load for several years.
Yeah.
And then you've got a 7% increase across 1 year.
Yeah.
And then you've got a 0.3% increase over the next 10.
Right.
And it just seems odd that in 2018, we've got this sudden 7% load without a massive influx of industry or...
When you do regression and go back far enough, it's not a projection of where you left off, it's where if you dig into the numbers and the trends of where they're going. But yeah, I mean, we're always looking at that. And I think everybody's kind of in the same boat in terms of, are we losing load? Is it weather driven? Is it efficiencies? You know, we're all happy to see more efficiency on the system. Lots of LED bulbs are coming in and replacing the old incandescent. So as you try to adjust to that, you don't really know what the consumer behavior is, but you try to dig further into that. And I think you have sounds like some experts here to talk about energy efficiency later, but we try to get a handle on that. You know, when President Bush put in the energy efficiency standards around lighting, I think the industry itself saw some projections and changes around that. So that was back 2007, but we're starting to feel the effects now. But it takes a while to replace bulbs in your house, and the costs are coming down a lot from where they were before with LED. So
I think often in renewables, there's a kind of packaged along with combined cycle natural gas or something to kind of take up when renewables don't work at night or when the sun doesn't shine. So I know that around the time this renewable RFP went out, there was the combined cycle RFP that went out.
Yes.
Will we be seeing two decisions or one combined decision, do you
well,
think?
the only decision I'm talking about today is the solar one. The other decision will come later. So we're still working on where we're at there.
Okay.
So this is the one and it's an easier, if you think about it, this is a faster track. The simplicity of putting in solar versus any types of thermal, mechanical type things are much bigger. So.
What about the subject of wind? Have we talked about wind?
Yeah, I wish I'd have gave you a chart. Wind's just not very good and throughout here, unfortunately. It's I was just looking at that earlier today. It's if you go up into maybe the northern part of Indiana, move across to Illinois, then it starts getting better. Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, that's all really good wind areas. For whatever reason, I might feel windy out on certain days around here, but it's just not good wind for making energy. So, and as you go from here clear down into Georgia and Alabama and all, it gets even worse in Tennessee. So it's pretty tough in the southeast for renewables. Biomass is often looked at because of a lot of trees and waste pulp and things like that.
Is there anybody in the U.S. building the larger turbines that can benefit from the wind that is available in the southeast? So I think that EIA chart has viable wind at 100, 130 meter.
Yeah, there's not many. I mean, I could plot it out, but if anybody put any out there, for instance, TVA, they bought their last wind unit up in Minnesota, to give you a perspective. So they said, as big as TVA's footprint is, they said, we're going to contract for wind in Minnesota because they want to go to where, you have a better wind source. So you just don't see a lot, even at the higher elevations. I don't think it makes a big difference.
I know early there was a lot of discussion about offshore wind, so off the ocean, which the southeast has some ocean area.
Yeah, but I don't think the wind's even that good down there. That's more the East Coast. Massachusetts is putting some in. Tremendously expensive right now, as you can imagine. Imagine the power of the ocean, and you're trying to anchor something out to harness that. It's probably on the order of 5-6 times more expensive than conventional wind onshore.
Okay.
So I guess just one more comment on the load stuff. I noticed an article today actually about TVA having to deal with, their forecast for, reduced load over the coming years. And then I noticed from the EIA data that there's, 10, 12, 14 years of reduced demand in Kentucky.
Right.
How does that match with, the increased demand that we see in the KyMEA load?
Well, I wouldn't get too caught up on that because let me just go back to that.
I guess the 0.3% I see for the 10 years doesn't concern me as much as the 7% growth I see this year.
That's true enough, but keep in mind we're not making any more resource decisions based on that projection. So as we keep trying to fine-tune what our load projections are, and we got a big gap like that, we'll readjust what our energy needs are and our capacity needs. Our near-term decisions, that was made back when we had a projection of we thought loads were going to be. If things truly are dropping off, we'll adjust accordingly along this outer years. And 2022 is not very far away. Yeah. So it's I know everybody's like there be more precision in load forecasting. It's an art and science combined. It's very difficult to understand consumer behavior, where technology is going. I've always thought if our electric cars come along, it could change that whole projection a lot the other direction, for instance. But that hasn't happened yet, even when there was government incentives to try to move that direction. So that's we're always going to adjust accordingly. But once your decisions are made, you either can sell excess if there's a market for it, or you just say, well, that's a little excess and capacity, but there's value to that capacity because you're selling excess energy into the market and making profits on that and feeding that back into reducing your members' costs. So it's not lost capacity if you're over and above any of those lines, and that's just typically how it is. I mean, in a perfect world, we'd know whatever projection is in the future, but there's just no way to know that. So you have this bell-shaped curve. You shoot for the middle of it, knowing I'd rather err on the side of having a little bit extra as opposed to be short. And that's really how we approach these things. We want to have a reliable, stable power supply for our members that's cost-effective.
I noticed the annual MISO capacity market, they had a $10 closing cost this last sale.
Right.
In previous years, it was even lower. I mean, do we feel like that our excess capacity is still going to be economic selling into MISO?
Yeah. So I don't know if you understand that market very well. In
Just
MISO.
a little, yeah.
I don't want to take all your time up here, so you can cut me off whenever you need to. So MISO.
I mean, you don't have to get too deep into it. I was just kind of looking at, given those reduced capacity costs, are we still economic? Are we still in the money there?
So let me tell you what happens with MISO. If you ever look at a supply curve on capacity sales, it bids almost zero until the very tail end, when it maybe shoots up. The reason is because all the regulated utilities in MISO already have their capacity that they need, or if they're short, they'll go do a bilateral deal with someone else. And you don't get to see those prices. So you and I go out here and we make our bilateral deal, and we lock up our capacity. So sellers happy, buyers are happy, we're good to go. Now I have to bid that capacity into the auction. Well, the person who bought that capacity is going to bid it in at essentially zero because they're already covered on what they have. All they have to do is bid it in, and they have to buy everything back. So they're balanced back out, and they said, well, I'm just going to bid in at zero because I want to make sure it clears in the auction. And I'm buying for my load on the other side. So the MISO market is a very poor indicator of the value of capacity because of the structure of it. And they've struggled with it mightily, and that's why you'll see Illinois have all kinds of problems with anybody that's a non-regulated state like Illinois and perhaps Michigan. They say, we're not getting a fair share here, but everybody else that's regulated said, I'm going to balance out to meet my requirements prior to the auction. I can't depend on the auction by doing bilateral deals. So grain of salt for anything in MISO capacity market. PJM capacity market's a better indicator because most of the PJM states are not regulated by the PSC. So they're maybe a true market in some sense. MISO is what they call a voluntary market that's not a good indicator. I'll just put it that way.
Okay. But I guess back to my question, do you feel like we're still in the money on our excess capacity?
If we were in the money on our excess capacity, it would be through a bilateral market. So yes, I think we got a very good deal on it. We'd have to find somebody that's short, and we'd go make a deal with them, not in the auction, but we would say, hey, we have some excess, you want to buy some?
I see.
And there might be energy tied to that, or it might be just purely a capacity need. And that's a different balance as well.
Also, are we keeping in mind that the number of members in KyMEA may expand in the future? And that has to do with capacity, what we're going to have available.
For us to be successful in economies of scale, we want as many participants as possible. We welcome all. And it makes a lot of sense. We're public power for Kentucky. That's what our new logo, right? So that's what we're trying to do is to make sure that we have economies of scale, and to do that, it would help to be larger.
And I know you mentioned it's hard to know the future. Are we working towards doing an official integrated resource plan, IRP?
Always. Yeah, we'll always do IRPs. Yeah.
So,
I mean, right now, what we're putting together here, these are IRPs. We're doing integrated resource plans for our capacity portfolio, for our energy portfolio, run through sophisticated models. We'll bring that in-house and start doing doing more of those in-house as well. But yeah, certainly at least every other year, or most likely every year, because I've done them for nearly 30 years now, so I've done a lot of IRPs, and we have a lot of in-house expertise in that area.
That's curious. I guess from the IRPs I've seen, I've not seen any documentation out of KYMEA that looks like any of those other IRPs that gives you different resource stacks that compares the value of those and gives you trend lines of regulatory change and political change and economic change to be able to make those decision trees. So is that stuff that's out there that we just haven't seen?
No, we'll do those. And keep in mind the infancy of the agency. So you're starting off you're given notice to KU, and you need to put together a power supply portfolio. This was very good work done by our consultants to say, let's do RFPs and find out what's out there for both type and timing. And they had a very specific idea that said we need to mimic KU in the early years to have a very similar mix, and then we can start to deviate from there. So why, I mean, the reason we have this hole in 2022 is for that very reason. As you start to do IRPs and as part of that and fill in those holes, that's when you have more flexibility moving forward.
I guess why wouldn't you do one up front? I mean, we see the examples here in the state of OMU and Henderson, and for OMU's retirement of their plants, they did an IRP to look into the future, and so did Henderson, and they had broad and varied portfolios they considered in both of those.
As did this. The portfolio considered in this one was what kind of purchase power mixes can we put together?
I guess from my perspective, looking at the data, it looks like it has the perception of being more onesie-twosie, where we're getting a contract here and a contract there, similar to what we're doing now with the renewables and the combined cycle. Whereas it looks like what happened in OMU and Henderson's case, and in the other, national range IRPs I've looked at, where they look at all of those resources, whether it be solar, combined cycle, wind, thermal, whatever it is,
right,
combined with whatever energy efficiency programs and whatever else they have going on, and they pull all that together in the different scenarios to track processes forward. I've not seen any level of diligence or data come out from the process that we're at to date that demonstrate that level of analysis.
Oh, no, it's been there. So if
I'd love to see it if it is.
Well, let's think about this for a minute. If we talk about some of the IRPs you're talking about, and I put in modular nuclear, and then it gets eliminated, right? So they show that in one of your charts and said, I have a small pebble bed nuclear plant eliminated. This consulting group looked at those same types of resources and said, what's available? We're trying to get, by 2019, we have to have the agency up and ready to run. So you're going to have contracts in place, some short-term, some long-term, different types of fuel mixes. So this portfolio that's put together, 14% below KU's, was a very good portfolio right out of the gate. And as we progress forward in years, we're going to do the same type of analysis you're talking about. But keeping in mind, we're a small agency, we're not going to be able to build every type of resource. So I can throw them into a mix and say, what if there's a nuclear unit, should we participate? That might get eliminated because there's not one being built. But even though it shows up in the chart, as you mentioned. So we can look at different types of technology, because ultimately you come down to what's available for the agency.
Sure. So then all those decisions were made at the consultant level before they got presented to the munis, or where were those decision trees done to pick those different resources?
Yeah, they would have been discussed all the time with the board members, but I've been consulting work for a lot of years. There's a lot of times you just eliminate things early on, because they could have put a pebble bed nuclear reactor, right? Well, is one going to be built anywhere around here? They'd have said, well, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to waste the agency's money looking at that any further, because it's not going to be built. Just like you're not going to do maybe tidal generation in Kentucky because there's no tidal generation. I'm not going to do wind because there's no wind. So you just start eliminating things. And that's called a screening curve. So screening curves eliminate things early on, where you can focus on what are the things that I can do to be active in May of 2019, because I have to have a portfolio in place in May of 2019. So they did a terrific job of putting that portfolio together, and they say, now as we move forward, we're going to keep going with it. So.
Okay. Well, I guess my understanding of the IRP, it also includes the demand side and, other political weather changes, those aspects.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember seeing that in any KYMEA literature. Did I miss it?
There'll be more of that coming along.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure where you want us to go from here. There's a 3-year portfolio in place to get it to this point, right? And then we're looking at the next pieces of it as we move forward. And as we go forward past that, we'll look at the next pieces. And each time as we build a staff and we get those processes in place, there'll be more stochastic analysis. But if you look around how many people have done stochastic analysis around IRPs, and everybody familiar with that term? That's
Well, it's
uncertainty
random.
analysis around load and fuels and
Okay.
capital costs and those types of things. And those can be 100 scenarios across a very sophisticated model. Those are the types of processes, of course, we'll do going forward. But this is where we're at in our portfolio right now.
I mean, isn't this a good time to start doing that? I mean, most of the IRPs I see are, 20, 30 years out. I mean, I would certainly be significantly more comfortable adding more resources if we had that kind of projection forward, regardless of what type of resource it is. I mean, I would certainly love to see, more renewables get pulled in, but to be comfortable with that, I would want to see, those long-term projections and some understanding about how those dynamics work.
Okay. I think I assured you we're going to do those types of things as we move forward. As an agency, we're going to do integrated resource plans.
But I guess if we're signing up for, a 20-year PPA with solar and however long the combined cycle PPA comes out, that covers that kind of locks us in for quite a period of time, as we're already locked in, for 10 years with 2 of the PPAs we have.
Right.
I guess that's my concern with all of this, and, I share the concerns that we've had from our consultants that, we don't have that breadth of planning and that holistic package out in front of us.
Okay.
The next KYMEA board meeting will be next Thursday in Bowling Green. I think that's May 24th at 10 a.m. Central Time.
So a week from Thursday.
Yes, they're
Okay.
typically on the 4th Thursday of the month, except when we get into November, December, and the holidays. Occasionally will be moved up or back. Usually it's the 4th Thursday of the month. As Mr. Burrish did point out, it looks like that this PPA is coming to the KYMEA board, so I'll be asked to make a vote on that PPA for solar. So this board of directors, I'm going to be looking to you all to give me direction on how you would like me to vote. This is a 20-year deal, and I've heard the comments tonight and previous, so I'll be looking to this board to give me direction and a vote on how to vote on that in July.
In July.
Yeah,
Good.
at the
So we
KYMEA
have
board
time.
meeting. So any information you need, any comments, questions, concerns, that you can continue to communicate. I know when you reach out to them, if you wouldn't mind copying me on the emails as well, so I just know what's being asked, and I know make sure that you get what you need. That would be great.
And thank you, David, for the information you have sent to us about the past meeting and the PPA information. So thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, sir, very much.
Thank you, Doug. Our next item is safety. Kim?
My reports are on page 98, 99. The cable department is kind of in the spotlight this month with, we have poison ivy, OSHA recordables as our most frequent OSHA recordables, which is good unless you're the one suffering from poison ivy. So, and then there were 2 vehicle accidents in the cable department, both of them backing accidents, and both of them were minor damage involved. So, any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Next, water distribution.
Good
Alan?
evening, Madam Chairman, members of the board. Water distribution report can be found on pages 100 through 102. We had 3 main breaks and 0 outages.
Were those main breaks ancient pipes?
Most of them were old, but most of them were small,
Okay.
2-inch and under.
Okay. Thank you.
Most common main break.
Speaking of old things, today's Alan's birthday.
Well, happy birthday. Happy birthday, Alan. Water treatment plant. Julie Roney.
Good evening. For the month of April, the water treatment plant treated 223.6 million gallons of water. That was for an average of 7.45 million gallons per day. We were down a little bit again for the month of April in comparison to our 2 reference years. But that was primarily because April, if you will remember, was a cold and wet month. We had almost 4 inches of rain and temperatures did trend below normal. The river flowed at roughly 19,000 cubic feet per second, which came to 12.4 billion gallons of water a day, so that reflects all of that rainfall. I guess the good news for the water department moving forward, I saw on the National Weather Service today that the first 15 months of May are setting heat records. So we are pumping a little bit more water, and I'm sure Scott's producing a little more, or moving a little more electricity. So if there are any other questions or comments, I'd be happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. So, our next item of business is the update from the Vermont Energy Investment Corporation. They've been doing interviews with board members, key stakeholders in the community, discussing what Frankfort is like and what Frankfort could use.
Thank you, and thank you for having us.
Good.
Yeah, I'm going to start with a quick introduction. I'm Juliette Juiaha, and on this project I serve as primary contact with the Frankfort Plant Board and with the board, and also as project manager. Carrie Hoover here is our communication and stakeholder outreach lead, and Jonan Backman, who you will meet at the July board meeting, is our program design lead. And there's a team of 11 of us at VEIC who is working on this project, and that team includes subject matter experts and engineers and program implementers. A little bit about VEIC. We are a nonprofit, and we have been doing energy efficiency for about 30 years. We specialize in designing, implementing, and evaluating energy efficiency programs. And we also work with transportation efficiency and renewable energy programs. The work we have done spans 38 states, as well as Canadian provinces and international work. We have worked with clients that include governments, government agencies, regulators, utilities, foundations, businesses, and organizations, as well as nonprofit organizations. In terms of, as I mentioned, we do energy efficiency program implementation as well as program design. Our 3 main energy efficiency programs that we implement include Efficiency Vermont, where we are the statewide energy efficiency program implementer, and we have been doing this since 2000. In Washington, D.C., we implement the D.C. Sustainable Energy Utility, and we have been doing this since 2011, where we do energy efficiency programs as well as renewable energy programs. And then Efficiency Smart is the efficiency program that we do in partnership with the American Municipal Power, the AMP, with members from AMP. And we've been doing this since 2011 in Delaware, Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. And there too, we offer energy efficiency programs. We offer a suite of program offerings, and the municipal utilities can pick what they like best and what programs to implement in their areas. I have personally worked with Efficiency Vermont on their program implementations, and Carrie here is working with Efficiency Smart as well. So we both have a foot in implementation as well as designing programs. So Frankfort Plant Board hired VEIC to develop energy efficiency programs for the plant board, and and not to do this in a vacuum, but to make sure that we engage the community and hear from Frankfort Plant Board's customers to really understand what programs would be best suited for Frankfort. And we want to make sure that the programs that we propose are well aligned with the needs of the customers and businesses in Frankfort. But I want to make sure there's a clear understanding about what energy efficiency is before we dive deeper into the project. At this point, I want to differentiate energy efficiency from what I would call conservation measures. Energy efficiency allows you to do the exact same thing you were doing, but with a lower energy consumption. For example, if you replace a light bulb with an LED light bulb, to get light, you still just switch. You flip your switch and you get light. Same if you replace your old fridge with an energy efficient refrigerator, your food and your drinks still remain cold, but you're using less electricity to do that. And I would compare that to conservation. In the case of conservation, you have to actively do something to use less energy. And I'm thinking turning off lights. You have to go around and remember to turn off lights and unplug appliances. So what we're talking about here is really energy efficiency, where there are no sacrifices involved on the customer's side. There's an upfront investment to purchase more efficient equipment, for example, but there's no sacrifice in terms of activities on the customer side. And there are many benefits to energy efficiency beyond reducing energy consumption and as a result, reducing utility bills. Some of those benefits include, as I mentioned, lower customer utility bills, but also if the improvements are done to a customer's home and results in a more comfortable home with less mold issues or better ventilation, there's just going to be an increase in comfort in the customer's home. On the business side, if the customer uses less energy to do their activities, they will improve their operating costs and therefore become more competitive. The energy efficiency can also create jobs, especially in the field of auditing buildings and renovating, and those jobs are beneficial to the local economy. On the utility side, efficiency can reduce peak demand and therefore reduce the utilities' need to purchase the more expensive electricity during peak times. Energy efficiency can also enhance energy independence by reducing the need to purchase energy from outside the state. And last but not least, energy efficiency reduces the need for energy production and as such has environmental benefits. So some of Frankfort Plant Board's objectives in developing energy efficiency plans that they have shared with us is that we really want to focus on the customers and make sure we provide options for customers to lower their utility bills. We want to make sure that the energy efficiency programs will have something for every customer class, that no customer class will be left behind. FPV wants to make sure that we provide clear directions for each program and that the individual programs are integrated into an overall unified strategy and plan. And also, FPB would like to have flexibility to pick and choose different programs based on what is or isn't working in Frankfurt once the programs are implemented. And one important component as well is to make sure that education and educations of both customers and stakeholders is included in the plan. Some of the program strategies that we will be considering in the energy efficiency plan include technical assistance, an incentive or rebate for energy efficient products and equipment, behavioral modifications that drive energy conservation, education materials to further educate the community in Frankfort on energy efficiency, and loans and financing options. So those are the options that we will be considering. At this point, we're just getting started, so we don't know yet which of those options we'll be focusing on at this point. I want to provide a few examples from savings that we have seen in other and similar municipalities. These examples are from work we have done with Efficiency Smart, with municipal utilities. In this case, a family participated in the Efficiency Smart program, replaced 10 incandescent light bulbs with LEDs, and upgraded their clothes washer and clothes dryer with more efficient models. And this allowed them to first save money up front on purchasing this equipment because there was a rebate program in place, but also, and more importantly, over the life of the measures. So over the 10 years that an LED bulb is expected to be in place, and probably around 10 years that the washer dryer is expected to be used, they will save over $1,500 in energy costs. Another example, this time on the commercial side, this is from a restaurant that has upgraded their lighting and refrigeration and have seen savings of 7,300 kilowatt hours, annual cost savings of $6,000 on their electric bills, which will amount to $27,000 saved over the life of the measures. And they're expecting to get their money back over less than 2 years. Another example from a large industrial customer. In that case, the manufacturer has upgraded their lighting and lighting controls as well as their motor controls. That customer has saved over 2.3 million kilowatt hours, which amounts to $188,000 a year of electric bill savings. Over the life of those measures that they have put in place, they're expecting to save $2.6 million. So those are significant savings for the customers. And again, they're expecting a payback on the investment that they have done upfront on those efficiency measures of less than 2 years. So I'm providing those numbers only as examples, and there's no guarantee that customers in Frankfort will see the same numbers. But I wanted to provide examples to make sure that you understand the magnitude of the potential savings for your customers. Next, I want to provide a quick update on a quick overview of the timeline for this project. We had a kickoff meeting with the Frankfort Planning Board about a month ago in mid-April, and we have been here for 2 days at this point, conducting interviews with the board and with community members to get a better sense for Frankfurt and the needs of the customers in Frankfurt, and presenting an overview of the project to the board. We will be conducting another set of interviews as needed in July, and we'll be presenting an update on the project at the July board meeting. And then we'll be developing the final report and presenting our proposed plan and recommendations at the September board meeting. Next, I will pass it on to Carrie to provide a short overview of what we heard from our interviews over the last 2 days. And then I will provide a little more updates on next steps.
Thank you. So as Juliet mentioned, we did several interviews over the past 2 days. We interviewed 11 groups and individuals. I haven't tallied the number of people that were here yet, but I'm guessing somewhere between 40 and 50 people total between all of the groups that we got feedback from. So we heard from quite a lot of groups. We spoke to the individual board members. We spoke to FPB staff. We spoke to representatives of different groups. So some of your large industrial customers, those representing residential populations, business associations, I think it was the Downtown Association specifically, institutional customers, and government. and then a representative from the schools. So I think we got a very diverse set of information, a good cross-section from your community. And as Juliet mentioned, if there were some people that I know are unavailable, so we'll still have opportunity to do either over the phone or potentially in person in July if that's needed. On the last slide, there's also contact information for somebody at Frankfort Plant Board. If there is anyone who wants to go ahead and provide input on their own, they can do that as well. So during the interviews, one of the things that we asked, we wanted to know what makes Frankfort different. So when we're exploring what to do here, that we make sure that it's tailored to the community. So this highlights some of the feedback that we got. We heard a lot that this is a capital city, but yet it maintains a small town feel, and you have the proximity of both Lexington and Louisville, so there's still a lot of urban amenities, but again, that small town feel. A lot of people told us that the cost of living's low, but we also heard that wages are stagnating here. We heard from several people that there's low unemployment, that while people have jobs, in some areas there's a lack of qualified workforce. I know in one of the large industrial customers and others expressed some issues with the workforce. We heard across the board again about the strong presence of government here, so both or all three, state, county, and city government. There's also a large influx of people during the day because of the government work that's done here, so the population tends to balloon weekdays during the day. We also heard that there's a large population of both renters and that those, and also residents that are in the 55 and older age group. And finally, one thing that we heard is that Frankfort has very good rates. And most people recognize that, and we're very appreciative of that, and that's something that they want to maintain here. And then we also asked people what they felt would have the greatest impact. If we were to bring an energy efficiency program here, what would they like to see in it? Across the board, everyone seemed to mention that the primary driving factor behind this that would motivate people would be lowering their energy efficiency, their bills, their electric bills. So this was consistent across all rate classes. And then there were several suggestions given for potential strategies that we could use that might be successful here in Frankfort. One thing that was mentioned frequently was education, particularly of residents, small business owners, and landlords. Home energy audits for residents, there was potential seen there. More specialized technical assistance for your large commercial, industrial, institutional type users. Financing options, whether it's rebates, incentives, or something like on-bill financing, different, or loan fund, something of that nature. And then also potential for building code changes that could increase standards that people would have to meet for energy efficiency. So those were, without going through all the data, we've taken a ton of notes over the past 2 days. We've spent several hours in interviews, so we'll be transcribing that and really taking a deeper dive into everything that we learned. But those were some of the key things that we seem to hear frequently as far as what makes Frankfort different and what people would like to see here.
So our next steps following the interviews that we just conducted is going to be to digest all we heard on these interviews and summarize the findings from those interviews. We will also analyze data that is specific to Frankfort Plant Board that has been provided to us. And from this, we will develop a matrix of options for energy efficiency programs, and we will review this matrix with the Frankfort Plant Board team. And from this matrix, we will select options that look the most favorable And those options will be evaluated further, and we will do additional work on those selected options to evaluate the savings potential and cost, and providing a cost estimate for those options. And we will incorporate all this into the final report and recommendations that we will be presenting to the board in September. So with this, I wanted to provide contact information will be William Lin at the Frankfort Plant Board, and he will forward to us any requests that would require our attention. And with this, I wanted to see if you had any questions for us.
I had one, and this may be hard to answer. How did Frankfort, our customers, compare with other studies you've done? Just on a very limited level, or,
I think some of the things we highlighted as being unique to Frankfort is really how the customers are different. The fact that it's a government town, but a small government town, as well as having a lot of both employees that come into Frankfort but live outside of Frankfort, but also having population residing in Frankfort but working outside of Frankfort. So the transient nature of the employees and residents in Frankfort is, I would say, is unique compared to other towns. Not unique, but it is combined with the fact that Frankfort is a government town and a small town, I think makes it pretty unique.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you for your report and all the time you've spent.
Thanks.
Our next item of business, number 6, has been withdrawn. We don't have enough information to cover the question there on electric rate changes. So we'll go on to item 7, which is consider calling for a public hearing to increase Kentucky River Authority's water withdrawal fee. And Hans will talk about that.
Good evening. Just very briefly, the plant board and other cities draw water from the Kentucky River as a source of water. Approximately 20 years ago, the General Assembly created the Kentucky River Authority to manage the river as a water source. The KRA charges fees, of course, to get funding to help manage the river. They have changed one of their fees called the Tier 2 fee. The Tier 2 fee is used for dam maintenance. They've increased that fee to 22 cents per 1,000 gallons. So we need to pass that fee on through to our customers. This is no fee that is charged by the plant board. It's not set by the plant board. It's set by the Kentucky River Authority, and we pass those funds along to the authority. We do adjust that fee for water losses and water that's used in production, and that's about 4.8 cents per 1,000 gallons. So tonight I ask the board to call for a public hearing. We will hold that public hearing as soon as possible. Then the board can approve that rate, and we will begin charging that rate to our retail customers and to Georgetown, the one wholesale customer. The wholesale water districts that are regulated by the Public Service Commission, we will file a new tariff with the PSC after the board approves the rate. 30 days after we file that tariff, that rate will take effect if the districts don't intervene, and then we can begin charging the districts. So tonight, ask for the board to call a public hearing, please.
Do we have a motion to call a public hearing? Okay. Steve Mason has made a motion to call a hearing for review of this water rate increase for KRA.
Second.
And we have a second. Any discussion?
Hans, how does that work? Can KRA just unilaterally increase the fee? There's no process in front of the PSC for that rate change?
Yes, they can. This is the way it's been done the last several years. The PSC the PSC does not consider this just simply a pass through, though. So we have to file a tariff with them. One other point, like to ask that the board We have some budget meetings on June 5th. I'd like to combine that public hearing on June 5th if possible, and have that in at 5 o'clock in the evening.
Seems like a pretty steep rise from 13 to 22. Are we expecting, I mean, has that happened before, and do we expect that to happen again?
It's happened. It has happened before, and it's used to maintain the locks and dams. So as they do construction along the river, they pass these fees on. And this letter that's in the board package on page 108 of 159 is typically the notice that we receive. We've never received a meeting or had somebody call the general manager and say. Now, we have had representatives from the plant board on that board before. So
that was the next question. Should we be going to those meetings so we have a little more heads up on these kinds of changes? I assume that's a non-trivial impact to our rate structure.
It's not a huge impact, but they're open meetings. Obviously, you can attend as you. The board, I'm thinking, is comprised of. I know that we had a county judge from Frankfort on the board at one point, and had a couple past staff members on the board. I don't think we have anybody. I think I don't know how you get nominated or how you campaign, for lack of a better term, to get on that agency, but that's the notice, and that's what we. The choice that we're faced with, and what all the other cities are faced with too. So
I think it's recognized that the dams on the Kentucky River are in pretty bad shape, and we can expect a lot of rehabbing of dams in the future. And this Kentucky River Authority fee is like so many things. It started out inconsequential. It's a line item on our bills. If you look at our bills, you'll see it on there. Very small item, but unfortunately, predictably, it's growing. And I think it's becoming something enough now to be concerned about. One way it impacts us, or potentially impacts us, is in dealing with our wholesale water districts. We have to come to agreement with our water districts for our water, and 2 and maybe 3 of our water districts have alternatives as to supplemental sources. Louisville, and Louisville doesn't have to pay to take water out of the Ohio River. The United States is still paying all the costs of maintaining Ohio River dams. So I don't know that there's a lot we can do about it, but it is something that bears watching, because it's going to become a bigger factor in the future. And competitive aspect of this, dealing with our water districts, it's really hard to raise our rates with our water districts when they can say, well, we can get water from Louisville cheaper. So that's sort of a ceiling that we bump up against. So I don't have any answer. I'm just saying that this is a coming problem, I think.
Mr. Ludwig, you're absolutely right. It will continue to add additional rate pressure to our wholesale customers that come back from the west. Absolutely correct.
And this increase does, pretty much double the 13 cents that they had. 22 is double.
And this is just for maybe one dam, or working one dam, and got all these dams that need work and rehabbing. It's going to be a...
I guess I should remember, the Kentucky River Authority, do they get a state appropriation, general fund appropriation, or is it just merely run by their fees?
that I don't know. I'm sorry. I'd have to check.
Just want to know if we need to go and start advocating for the Kentucky River Authority.
Well, it does look like we should be aware of when they have their meetings and read their reports. Is there someone on staff that we could ask to track when they have meetings?
Sure,
and
we can
possibly
watch.
Publicize it either in the minutes or in emails?
We can track them. I mean, I don't know if they have a website or
of sorts.
But that's not a problem.
Okay, yeah, I think as the comments here show, we should maybe keep a closer assessment of what's happening with them. So if there's no other discussion, we'll go on to item number 8. Consider approving.
Did we
Oh,
vote that?
I'm sorry. So we have a motion and we have a second. All in favor of adding this hearing to our June 5th budget meeting?
Aye.
Okay, aye. Motion
Let's be clear
passed.
if I understand that it'd be 5 o'clock.
Yes, it would be June 5th, 5 o'clock, a hearing concerning the rate increases for Kentucky River Authority, causing to our water rate increases.
I think we had budget meetings earlier that day, so this will flow down to that.
Yes, yep.
We would actually probably notice it as a separate meeting, and hard stop at 5 for the budget
The hearing.
meeting, and this would be a separate notice.
Yes.
Yes, to follow the formal
Technically a
rules.
separate meeting, but
Right.
all in the same day.
Sure.
Yep, we would be here. So, item 8, consider approving a request for a public hearing regarding proposed water rate increase effective August 1st, 2018. David Billings.
We would also like to dovetail in with the public hearing on the 5th to have a hearing on our water rate increase scheduled, or that we're anticipating. This is the 3rd of 5 series rate increase. There'll be 2 following this. The typical 4,000 gallon residential city increase would be $1.90, would put it to $31.20 a month. Typical 4,000 county increase goes to $34.96. So still for about $1 a day, we're putting 4,000 gallons of water in people's homes. So it's still a bargain relatively, especially compared to the bottled water industry. But we would like to also have a public hearing on June 5th at 5.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, so we have a motion to have a meeting on water rate increases also at 5 o'clock on June 5th.
Would that be at 5 or would that be?
Would be as soon thereafter as, it would all be noticed on the same.
Same announcement. Okay.
A second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
And item number 9, consider approving a request for a public meeting regarding Reservoir project. David Billings will discuss. Thank you.
I was just up here. Oh.
Yep.
We were optimistic that our meeting that we had back in December of 2015 would substitute for the public hearing requirements for the KIA low interest loan. We found out a couple of weeks ago that it wasn't advertised it wasn't advertised in strict accordance with their standards. We needed a few more days, so they've asked us to back up and do it again. So the public meeting will be much like that one. We have some updated information to provide, so we're asking for that to also to occur on June the 5th.
Okay. So this would be the third item for water, and we do it in the same order? Okay.
Well, we could do it in whatever order you all wanted to do it.
Well, I'm just clarifying, but it's good to me. Okay.
This is action item number 9, is that right we're
That's
talking
correct.
about?
Yes.
Yep.
So this is for a public meeting as opposed to a public hearing, is that right?
That is correct. This is a public meeting. We're
Just wanted to clarify.
So Kathy, we'd have 2 hearings and then the public meeting, okay, all listed on the same notice.
It would be listed as you'd have the first public hearing is item number 1, the second public hearing is item number 2, the public meeting is item number 3. You could still notice them on the same agenda with the same notice. But we would do 3 separate public hearing notices in the newspaper to meet the requirements for the public hearing and for this public meeting.
Okay.
Might make sense to,
Right.
might make sense to schedule them in order of what we think the public interest is going to be.
Yeah.
Which, is that this order, or would we?
I guess I'll defer to David, but I assume number 9 would probably draw the most interest.
I would think you're correct.
I would think so.
Okay. So we're suggesting putting number
Go
9
first.
first and the hearings after that. Okay, so do we have a motion?
No.
Okay.
I move we approve a request for a public meeting regarding the Reservoir project to meet Kentucky Division of Water environmental review requirements related to Kentucky Infrastructure Authority financing.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passed. It's still David. Number 10, consider approving authorizing resolution to apply for a KIA loan for the reservoir replacement project. David to present.
In September of 2017, this board passed a resolution to apply for a $4 million low-interest loan through the KIA for our reservoir project. On April the 9th, 2018, the KIA board did approve our loan. For consideration now is accepting the conditional commitment letter from the KIA, which defines particular conditions with respect to the loan. An assistance agreement will be executed between KIA and the FPB upon satisfactorily performance of the conditions set forth in the letter. Staff recommends that the board accept the conditional commitment letter for loan F18-016. The staff attorney has reviewed and approved the letter.
Okay.
Particularly, it's a 20-year, $4 million loan at 1.75% interest. We expect that it will save our ratepayers quite a lot of money in interest over the years. Especially compared to today's bond market. If the bond market continues to go up like everybody's expecting, it would save even more.
Do we have a motion? Okay, Steve has made the motion that we accept.
Second.
Okay. Approving the authorizing resolution and apply for the KIA loan, the conditional commitment letter. So we have motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. Our next item is for water distribution. Consider award of bid invitation 1656 for a tapping machine and accessories to Core and Man in the amount of $66,186.66. Alan Smith to present.
Good evening. Staff prepared a bid invitation for the purchases for the purpose of purchasing a tapping machine and accessories to replace a machine that is approximately 50+ years old. The staff recommends awarding the bid to Core and Main in the amount of $66,186.66. The apparent low bidder did not meet specifications due to their machine not being one that auto feeds. The invitation was sent to 7 vendors with only 2 responses received. $100,000 is included in the purchase for this purchase and others in the current budget. This information can be found on page 20, lot item 590, small tools and equipment, $40,000, and line 620, operations equipment, $60,000.
Do we have a motion to purchase this tapping machine?
Excuse me. I'll move that we award bid invitation number 1656 for a tapping machine and accessories to Core and Main in an amount of $66,186.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor of purchasing the tapping machine?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Ellen. Okay, number 12, consider approval of professional service agreement and statements of work with Patterson, Dewar engineers. Brent Foster to discuss.
Yes, Board, the electric department has negotiated a master service agreement and 2 statements of work with Patterson Dewar engineers for planned substation improvement projects at both Twilight Trail and Bendix substations. The master services agreement does not include specific tasks. It's a baseline. It's a very common thing that we have with many of our contracts with professional services, especially. The MSA is your baseline, and then in the future, additional, and we actually have 2 of those here. If you're doing a specific scope of work on a project, the details of that scope of work are there, and then they're pursuant to the master services agreement. So we have for you here both the master service agreement, and we're also including 2 scopes of work to assist us with the installation of new 15 kV breakers. The total cost for the services are not to exceed $7,600 for Twilight Trail Substation and $8,800 for Bendix Substation. The projects are included in the 2018 electric capital budget, and the staff attorney has reviewed the contract documents and they meet with his approval. I'll be happy to answer any specific questions you have.
You want to spring for this?
You ready for a motion?
Yes. Would you like to make a motion?
Okay, I'll make a motion that we consider the bid invitation 1655 for 169 kV breaker.
So that's, we're up to, that's 13, we're at number 12.
Oh, sorry about that. With Patterson, Dewar engineers for the work for the Twilight Trail subdivision and for the Bendix substation.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have motion and a second. Ralph is smiling. I just had one question on this. The name Twilight Trail and Bendix, how were they assigned? Was that housing areas or something?
Yeah, the Twilight Trail substation is over on Twilight Trail off of I-64, and that's where its name came from. And the Bendix substation is located next to what originally was the Bendix brake plant. And obviously it's moved, it's no longer here in Frankfort, but the substation stay. We have a substation named GE, and there's no GE plant in Frankfort anymore either, so some of those are legacy names.
Just curious. We'll have it on tape now for all the history buffs in the future.
That's right.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor of purchasing the professional service agreement?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passed. Number 13, consider award bid invitation 1655 for 169 kV breaker to Alstom Grid LLC for the amount of $33,555. And vent again.
Yes. The staff prepared an invitation for 169 kV breaker, and they sent it to 10 vendors. We had 4 responses. After reviewing those, the staff recommends awarding to Alstom Grid in the amount of $33,555 with a delivery of 16 to 20 weeks. They did submit the lowest bid that met specifications. So this breaker will be used in Myrick substation. I'll be happy to have any.
I move we award bid invitation 1655 for 169 kV breaker to Alstom Grid LLC, the amount of $33,555.
And we have a second. All in favor of purchasing the breaker?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passed. Number 14, consider approving Sony movie channel agreement. Harvey Couch to discuss.
Thank you. Good evening. Staff recommends approval of the Sony movie channel agreement. This is a NCTC agreement with a term through December 31st, 2022. We currently have a direct agreement for carriage of the Sony movie channel, which is carried on the optional HD Plus tier on channel 776. This new agreement affords us the opportunity to maintain our existing subscriber rate while moving to the NCTC agreement. Year-over-year increases are based on the Consumer Price Index, which is the same as our direct deal, and no additional carriage requirements or obligations are included in this agreement, which has been reviewed by the Assistant GM for Administration and meets with his approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have about this agreement.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion that we accept the Sony movie channel agreement.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the Sony movie channel?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Harvey. Number 15, consider approving proposal with Engineering Associates LLC for engineering design of FPB's Phase 1 fiber to the home project in an amount not to exceed $100,000. David Denton.
Yes. I'd like to give, for those tuning in and for those here tonight listening, most of us walk through this process, but I'd like to give us a little background on this. It was during the 2016-17 budget process that we agreed to hire a consulting firm to come in and look at infrastructure improvements study for the Frankfort Plant Board. There were several different pieces of that study. We did put out a request for proposal. We sent those out to 9 different firms. 5 of those firms did submit proposals. After going through it over a number of months, we decided to land on Engineering Associates, LLC, and Kersey Consulting, LLC, to perform the study. Some of those objectives were to assess our current infrastructure and alternatives for improving that infrastructure, to meet future wholesale and retail demands for all of our offerings, voice, video, data services, to look at capital and operating costs of alternative infrastructure design versus costs associated with improving our existing plant, business case and deployment plan to allow us to transition or maintain existing services long-term while migrating to a new structure, and develop a strategy for phased deployment of improvements. The study came back, I think we got it in August, and it was presented to the board in August of 2017. And the study basically had 2 points to it. For an interim solution in order to deliver service to our customers, improved reliability, to go ahead and invest in our current hybrid fiber coaxial plant, to replace over 2,700 active end-of-life pieces of equipment. These are amplifiers and line extenders. The board approved that purchase back in, I believe, December of last year, and we've purchased the equipment, and we'll be bringing a bid approval to you next month to have some help. We don't have enough manpower to replace all that. The idea was to improve our current system enough, get us down the road, be able to provide service to our customers, and then to look at a long-term solution, with that ultimate solution being to future-proof our system and provide a fiber-to-the-home infrastructure. Today, you could say we're a fiber to the neighborhood. We do have fiber. We've been providing fiber service, dark fiber and other types of for anyone who wants it today. So this is not new to us, but as far as going to the home for everyone, this definitely is an exciting time to look at how we invest going forward with our current system. We have before you today a proposal from Engineering Associates. Proposal is for engineering and design of a master plan that would involve it's kind of a phase 1 design for network fiber to the home network deployment. And we have currently in this year's budget that the board approved $100,000 for the fiber to the home project. And so we're asking the board today to approve up to $100,000 design of the network. We're looking, as we mentioned in our executive digest here, we're looking at nodes 3, 4, and 5 that we would like to start with our phase 1. As the Engineering Associates, Kersey Consulting Associates study showed, what we offer to customers today is enough to serve the needs of most customers, but in order to keep up with the future demands that we see coming our way, and also to be able to, like we mentioned before, future-proofing our network, we're recommending to move forward with this phase 1 deployment. I should say phase 1 design. So this design would bring us down to more of a closer drill down into what exactly we're looking at as far as cost. So this would not be this is one of many decisions coming before this board on how we want to move forward. So Adam, would you have anything you'd like to add to this?
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, basically this is the initial design, and we can take those numbers and, different tweaks in different areas to see what the entire project's going to cost. I think it's important to do this first phase and then stop, reevaluate. We have the area we chose. There's a lot of different, there's business, there's residential, there's multi-family dwelling. It's close to the head end, so I think it's a good first phase to start with and kind of see at the end. And if we come back at the end and decide to build it, we build the first phase, and then we can kind of stop and see where we're at and see if we want to continue with the project, or if we have, speed the schedule up, slow it down, whatever the board wants to do at that time.
And this would just be design, it's not actually implementing it.
Right, just design, correct. Yeah, what we would plan to do is, as the design is being rolled out, we would start working on an RFP for the actual construction of the project. and hopefully when we get to the end of the design, be able to bring that back to the board and actually start the construction phase, which today is budgeted in next year's budget for this area.
So would this design be easily adaptable to the other area for each node, or like we're doing nodes 3, 4, and 5 here? When we get to, say, 6, 7, 8, would it cost as much as this?
It could. I mean, actually, we're looking at after this build, another next year's build to look at a different area too, and because every build's going to be different, especially when you get to a rural area where you're not passing as many homes. The cost is going to go up. Also, the cost is going to go up in underground subdivisions. So, as a part of the 5-year plan, we're trying to look at each one of those type areas and include that in the budget going forward, so we get a feel of what it's going to cost to do those areas. But we feel with the proximity of this to the head end and just what we're trying to do, this is probably the best starting point.
And when you mentioned the 5-year plan, is that to complete fiber to the home to all of our areas in 5 years?
No.
Oh,
no.
Okay.
But if we do this first phase and, the cost is looking more favorable than we have in the study, then we can ramp up. Or if we see that the take rate is higher than we expect, at that point in time, maybe it makes sense to go out and borrow funds to build it faster. But I think at this point, if we have the report, I think we need to move forward.
Will this consultant, will they be looking at the cost analysis of weighing building faster versus building cash only? Because I think that's got to be in the mix, at least to consider.
Right.
Because, looking at their reports, there were savings in that report, as I saw.
Right.
If you do some of these things. So, building faster, perhaps, I'm not advocating that, I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, in some of the reports, the savings are based on time. So if we decided to run it slower and engineer it in-house, yeah, there is a potential saving for engineering. It's in a report. But if we decide to speed it up, there's no way with the staff we have today.
No, it looked like there were maintenance savings, operational savings with the fiber to the home. Maybe that's minimal. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, operational savings, you would save some on electricity because it's a passive system. But I would say that, that's probably less than $50,000 a year in electric utilities. And actually, you're just actually putting the electronics at the customer's house versus, who's paying for the bill. There is, you're going to lower your maintenance cost. So there is some stuff there, but we don't have those figures yet.
Well, I'm just saying, is that going to be in their review, in their design?
No, sir. This would be just the initial design of this one particular phase. It's going to be purely the design and engineering of the network. We've got, as we roll out, we'll come back to the board they'll present the engineering design. They'll be walking, staking, checking all the different structures of this particular area we're looking to go to and come back. We have budgetary numbers in this report, but we'll come back to a more solid, here's what we think it would cost us to build this area. And then we would bring that to you. There's no doubt initially that our current system, the hybrid fiber coaxial system, would be funding the building of this new fiber system. So once we roll out to the first phase, we can see how quick the subscription rate is. Today, we've got, I think, about 4% of our customers on our fastest speed, 100 megabit per second. So we hope the plan today in our 5-year plan is to roll this out as quickly as we can pay for the plan in cash, is not to go out and borrow. But if we were to have just an explosion in uptake from our customers, then we could look at moving forward in a different way.
Well, I guess one of my points, again, I'm not advocating to do it faster. I'm just saying it's a factor that I think needs to be considered. I mean, you're talking about people demanding 100 meg. Well, 5 years ago, I didn't need any more than 1 meg just to do whatever I wanted to do. It wasn't that I demanded more. It was that the products out there demanded more for me to have what I wanted. The other question I had was, as subdivisions develop, and would it present a problem with an existing system if they went on and wired to the home?
Any new development, which we haven't had none in quite a while, the last development that we designed the fiber to the home system. The developer decided not to develop the property. So basically, anything that's came in new that's, kind of a development that we can isolate, we already look at fiber to the home as the design. Yes.
Along the lines of Steve's comments, there was some discussion in the report that talked about building out the central infrastructure prior to building out the individual homes.
Right.
I don't remember whether there were cost savings associated with that central plant build out versus.
Actually, it would cost you more to build out. I mean, because you can't turn on no customer.
Right. Well, I guess, overall cost, not rollout cost.
Right. Yeah, I mean, because you'll have initial savings. You'll have initial savings based on the report alone, because I don't think your take rate will be high enough, and that's $9 million of the project.
Right.
Is customer equipment. So if your customer, the drop's going to the customer house, if you don't have a take rate high enough, you don't have a substantial amount of savings there that you could build more of the infrastructure.
And I think also to Steve's point, I think it is a good idea for us to think about how to project, some of these financials forward, so we have some sense of what an appropriate pace may be. We certainly have more than take rate to consider here. We have the AT&T build out and the competitive structure there.
Right.
The competitive situation that's going to get built there pretty quick. Right. We might want to think about, those economic impacts as well. Right.
Yeah.
So is that something we need to roll into this first piece, or how do you think we fold that into?
This first piece is just for engineering and design of this initial phase.
Yeah. So staff want to
we only
have think about how to pull some kind of projections like that together, or is that after we start implementing, or where does that fit?
Well, we have 4% of our customers today. I mean, from what I can tell and what I've heard from other systems and looking at the report, your typical family uses 30 to 40 megabit per second is plenty, more than enough for most of your users. And that's played out in real life with our current system. Most customers subscribe to 10 meg. So there's no doubt that the current system is going to pay for the new system. So we're not going to have enough of an uptake to fund the current system. The idea, the way we look, we'd like to slow walk this a little bit. We want to get on this in engineering, but look, let's just see how we go. I really am very hesitant to plow into it, and definitely don't want to take out any loans at this time.
Well, I don't think anybody's saying fast or slow. I guess I don't want to make a choice for slow walk or fast walk. I'd like to see, right now I think we're saying we'd like to see some numbers about what those risks are and what those costs are. Because on one side we've got the take rate, but on the other side, if we get behind in the competitive build out with AT&T, we're going to have a loss rate that we're working against too.
And again, I agree with Walt. My question is the what ifs out there. If there's competition, as you see out there, you're talking about the present. You're right. I probably don't need any more than 30 or 40 right now.
Right.
But 5 years ago, I only needed 1 or 2. So I'm not talking about right now. When customers start demanding more, will we be able to do it? Now, we probably will be in the next 2 or 3 years. But as it continues and if it multiplies or compounds itself, then we're,
Yes, sir.
So I'm just saying, if we study this, we need to study.
I think if you really want to look at it that way, I think you need to spend $3 million, engineer the whole project. That way you know actually what your costs are. Because if you start studying this, you don't know what the costs are until you engineer it. And based on their report, it's $3 million to engineer across our footprint today.
Well, let me. This engagement, what would come next, and what would the timetable be for the next engagement, and what would that be? I mean, I saw it in here, but I'm trying to see.
Sure, go ahead.
I mean, basically, they're looking at 4 to 6 months for this design. At that point, we bring those numbers back to this board, and the board will say, it's a lot better than we thought. There are some savings here. It is up to the board at that time to.
What would our next positive step be if we okayed that, or
design,
are comfortable with that?
With the design, or
what would your next step be?
My next step would be, if you're comfortable with the design, then we send out and build that first part. At the same time, we either look at another firm, if the board has the pleasure, to look at another firm to design the rest of the project, or remain with EA and have them keep doing phases. It really depends. But there is no way for us to give an actual cost savings until we get started. And if you really want to truly look at the cost savings, we need to engineer the whole project up front before we build.
I guess in my mind, we're kind of talking about two different things. I think that, this initial design work and that initial, build out of, 4, 5, and 6, I think that's got to be happening no matter what. I think that's what we're doing, right? I think more what I'm heading towards, and I think where Steve was headed too, is, we're going to have to make some decision about, pace after that or during that or sometime concurrently. And I think we're talking about metrics and information to be able to decide that, and it'd be good to go ahead and start getting some idea of how we're going to get those metrics together to make those decisions on pace.
What metrics are you wanting to base it on?
Well, I mean,
as far as
I just look at all those
affordability
factors
or
out there that you can imagine, that you can think of, that, you got maybe some external pressure from perhaps competition.
Right.
I don't know if there's standards out there that you can anticipate the demands based on new technologies coming to homes, that will demand more, those kinds of things.
I mean, we have some metrics on what we're seeing now with our current system, and that's why we're kind of saying slower might be better. I mean, if today, if we were offering 100 meg and you have 4% of your customers take it, it would really be hard for us to come back.
We're not what we're talking about. What I'm talking about now is thinking about now and getting the data now to project out in 3, 4, 5, 6 years, as opposed to waiting 2 years from now and starting to do those things.
Right. No, I guess I'm not really saying that. I'm just saying I think we should do this 4 to 6 months and then evaluate where we're at. I mean,
I'm not
we can do that. We can do the other two, but as far as looking at, I don't know how I want to put this.
And I guess I agree. I think we should go ahead and do those 2 or 3 months, those 4 to 6 months, and we should already go ahead and move on talking about whether we're going to implement that. But I guess in my mind, I would like to see a parallel effort to start thinking about those metrics to help us make that decision about pace. So if there is some incentive that we need to get moving, we've got that data in front of us. If nothing else, a model to start feeding some numbers into to have some sense of what the dynamics are there, whether it's competition loss rate or it's take rate or whatever that is. Because after we make this decision after this 4 to 6 months to move forward with 4, 5, and 6, I would assume at some period of time after that, we're going to be making a decision on other nodes. And those other nodes are going to be a bigger factor as to what we think the dynamics are in the market that are going to drive that. And I don't see any reason why we should wait to start putting those numbers together.
It all comes down to money.
Yep, I agree.
It really does. I think when we're making the decision tonight is what we're saying is that we are going to overbuild the Frankfort Plant Board's telecommunications department in fiber, all the way from the head end to the premise, whether it be residential, multifamily dwelling, commercial, governmental, everyone's going to have a fiber connection. And really the matrix comes down to cost.
Right.
We know competitors are coming. We know fixed wireless is an issue. Cell phones are, most people, that's a big one too, 5G. So really the metrics is how quickly can we afford to pay for the system.
Well, all I'm saying, David, is that I'm not asking for another consultant to come in and do that. No. I'm just saying that you all can start thinking about and identifying those factors that could cause us to slow or speed up or consider paying it faster or paying more, whatever. Right. You can start thinking about those things yourself. You don't have to be going out and
right. Yeah, and we've already we've looked at some of that too. We're looking at faster ways to deploy it if needed. I mean, we just spent $1.5 million on the coax plant. There's still life there, and that was a part of the initial report, is to maximize what you can get out of your HFC to give you time to deploy fiber to the home. So we can still compete with HFC for a while.
The time in that report was, what, 3-4 years?
Yeah. And I guess I would like to see some trend lines, that have, if we have this take rate, this is the finances of it. If we have this loss rate from competition, this is the finances of it. And see those lines so we have some decision tools to have some sense of and be able to make some as informed of a decision as we can about what the economics are, about the speed.
Yeah, I guess we just got to figure out what our what are we losing, because right now, I mean, we're not losing customers.
Right.
So it's like, I don't know.
I'm projecting and forecasting, not right now. Right. And again, it's just you all thinking among yourself at your downtime.
Right.
Not.
I understand.
Well, could part of that be too, as these consultants work on designing it, that we check in with them and maybe report back next month on what they see so far, if there's any projection from?
I mean, I don't think that the engineering consultant would be able to, I mean, they're engineering the project. They're not really going to be able to tell if there's,
Okay.
I mean, if we see a decline in customer base, then we could be able to tell you because we would see it before the consultant
I'd like to
engineering
know,
firm.
I'd like to have some projections before we start seeing a decline.
Well, I would too, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, you know, we kind of know what we're doing and we kind of know what competition's doing.
Okay.
And as of yet, I haven't seen.
But it sounds like we all are saying kind of the same thing. We want ongoing projections.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to lose no customers either. And like I said, we are looking at different ways that we could deploy this faster if needed.
Okay.
It's not exactly what is laid out in their plan, but like I said, that was a plan. There's other ways that we can do faster deployment. There's other ways we can do things with HFC to stop competition as well. But those are just options that are out there, and we can.
I guess I just rather know the train's coming before I see the train coming.
Sure.
Understand.
Yep. And we've got this customer and penetration report that's every month on page 83. So we can kind of, you know, we're watching customer counts month to month. And so we'll definitely let you know. And you can check that out too.
But if only 4% of our current customers have the 100 meg, then what's the likelihood that somebody that currently has 25 meg is going to want a gig?
Right. Well, and that's my thought on it is, I mean, you want to stay ahead of the competition if you financially can do it. It don't jeopardize your business. But the other thing is you just want to be there when they need it. Or when, I mean, it's hard for us to say when they need it. We can only go with the data that we have. I mean, if you look industry-wide, 30, 40, 50 megs is where most people are topping out, even in, you know, residential, multifamily, that's what they're using. If you talk to fiber to the home, they say typically that their network is 94%, or it's 6% utilization on a fiber to the home network. So even on a fiber to the home scale, it's like, yeah, we have it, but we're not using it yet.
Right. But there's other things to keep in mind there. One, you know, from a competitive perspective, it's not just somebody, you know, I guess the overall assumption is that, or maybe misperception is that anybody that's going to buy fiber is automatically going to buy a gig connection. And that's not necessarily the case. You may have 25 megabits and you buy 20 and switch from HFC to 25 megabits on cable or on fiber. And there's a quality of service difference even at those same bandwidths because the latencies improve and you have better uptime and better stable signal and all that. And the other competitive pressures that you have to consider there, I think, are, at least some of them, are if you have a competitor coming in, you know, they're going to offer bundled services and they're going to offer discounts and they're going to be drawing customers, you know, just for that. And it's also, on the other side of that dynamic, if you do have a build out, an overbuild with fiber, you may not be upgrading your customers. You may not be moving them to gig service. They may prefer to move to a 25 meg service from a 25 meg service just to have the higher quality service, right?
And that's another question. Do we want to compete with ourselves? Do we want to offer a tier above what we're offering today, or do we want to offer the same tier?
Again, I'm talking about the future.
Right.
I'm just talking about starting right now thinking about the future rather than starting in 2 years thinking about the future. Right. You know, the other part of that study also talked about moving maybe cable and the phones to that, through that.
Yes. Today, the fiber to the home is basically leaving cable and phone customers on the RF plant, not putting them on.
But it can come through that.
Yes.
It can, but there's additional costs.
Additional costs.
Yeah.
Additional costs.
Right.
Okay.
I think there's maybe some argument to be made that we ought to think about, you know, as we're moving to a better broadband infrastructure, that fitting better with our mission and having other over-the-top providers coming in and offering phone and those types of services.
Again, I'm just thinking, and if I'm not saying we need to do this right now, but thinking ahead as early as you can makes sense to me. And that's all I'm saying right now.
Right now, we've got an action item on the agenda, and it's and I'll move that we approve the proposal with Engineering Associates, LLC, for the engineering and design of FPB's Phase 1 Fiber to the Home project in an amount not to exceed $100,000.
I'll second, and I'd also say that, you know, it's been a long time coming, and I'm glad, you know, we're seeing some progress. It's a good thing.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good. That's a good new direction for us. General manager comments. Do you have anything, David? Nothing? Okay, old and new business.
I have some new business, or, well, I don't know if it's old or new. Last month, you had asked that I meet with Frankfort Independent School System to see about the internet sign-up that we are partnering with them. And Cassie Estel, Ray Jean Wilson, if I'd put the glasses on, I could see. And I met with Dr. Barber, and I think we had a really productive meeting. Basically, we have a plan going forward to get students enrolled, and that will probably be completed by hopefully around the end of the summer. So they are sending the forms out with home visits, and they have an orientation in July that they'll have a table there to have people sign up. So it looks really positive in our being able to work with them and being able to get the students signed up for internet.
It sounds like most of the action items from your meeting went to the schools. Is there anything that we as FPB need to do to help?
No, it's really on their end.
Okay. Good.
Because according to Cassie, if she's still here, or Adam can probably, it only takes a couple days once we get the paperwork back from them before we can send someone out for the installation. So the holdup is really not on our end. It's getting the students' parents signed up.
Okay. And I suppose they go on summer break shortly?
Not until the end of June. No, gosh, I should know that. You know, they have the year-round cycle.
Okay. My only question was,
So-
is there summer work that they could be doing while they're not in school if they were signed up now?
I don't know that. I don't know.
Okay. Well, it's good that you checked in to see how they're doing, and I assume you're going to check in again later to make
Yeah.
sure.
But it was very positive.
Does anyone else have new and old business?
I just have one other quick thing. I'd sent out an email, I guess, several months ago that talked about the KyMEA training that's coming up in July, and I would really encourage everybody to go. It's a great opportunity to get exposure in all three of our business segments, telecom, water, and electric. There's a lot of other municipal boards there, a lot of other PSCs from various states, and it's just a really unique opportunity to take a deep dive into all the industry segments you work in. I've been before, and it's a very, very valuable training, and it's unique.
So that's in Michigan?
It's in Michigan, it's an MSU, and it takes place in July. I said there's an email from 2 or 3 months ago. I can send it again if everybody doesn't have it.
That might be good, just so people can find it. I had one thing on the budget meetings coming up. We have the 5th and 6th, I think is what David has lined out. And we also have 2 new board members. What we did last year was we had some meetings, I think in March before the June meetings, to kind of give people an overview of what the budget is about, and wondering if that's something we want to consider, even though it's later at this point. And then the other thing of the 5th and the 6th, Tuesday and Wednesday back to back, I'm wondering if it might be better to be a Tuesday and a Thursday, especially for, I know, Ralph, you've had crunches for your
I can do either.
Okay. Well, for myself, I'd like to see a day in between, but how would that work for you, David, if we did a Tuesday, Thursday rather than Tuesday,
We
Wednesday?
typically done back-to-back days. And I've met with Mr. Mason, Ms. Hale, to go over budget items in the past, look at what we've done. We could need more time, but I'm willing to do as many individual meetings, one-on-one, two-on-two, however many you need. We're shooting to get the budget to the board, first draft, mid next week. That'll give us about 2 weeks before these budget meetings to look at things. So,
Sure.
Yes.
I haven't looked at the dates yet, but my guess is the agenda deadline for June is that Friday of that week. So if you move it to Thursday, then that gives me a day to make any
get ready.
changes that you make on that second day. So I would prefer it stay Tuesday, Wednesday, just so that I have 2 days to make all those changes, because depending on what changes you all bring to the, table, could be significant work to do.
The other thing is continuity or flow, one day right to the next, whereas you put that break in there.
Oh, I
My
thought it would
attention
give us-
span isn't all that
Give us some
great, so I
changes
just
to
assume
digest.
go
Yeah, it
to
would give
3
us, our
days.
brains a section or time frame to reset.
Give you 4 hours and Wednesday morning's pretty good.
I don't know.
It's not like Tuesday will be a long day.
Well, we only have,
2 8-hour sessions, so.
Yeah, well-
3 4-hour sessions is much better.
Tuesday, though, we have all those, the 2 hearings and the presentation by David for the KIA loan, or.
As long as you don't mind, give us a little grace on getting the final turned back around for the board meeting. That would be.
I would be happy to give grace on that.
Yeah, I think Katrina's concern is legitimate. I mean, it's to be considered. I mean,
I know one year there was like 13 things you all wanted to
Yeah,
add,
that's
so
right.
if that can be a lot of work.
The only,
depending on-
the only grace I think that she would need is, that deadline's, it's a hard deadline for us,
Mhm.
Kathy, and myself, mostly for her, because she does most of the putting the actual board package together, but it may mean instead of getting your board package on Wednesday, you might not get it till Thursday, or something of that nature, so I think that's sort of what we're talking about.
Okay.
Which is fine, I mean, we're happy to work with you, and if you all want to do.
The other thing is a personal thing, but on the 9th, I'm leaving for vacation. Is that Saturday? So I have a hard deadline.
Okay, good points.
Can you make a sacrifice for the, no.
I've made a lot of sacrifices.
Oh, that's real.
Dangerous territory there.
Now that you say the 9th, I'm out that Friday. I will be back on Monday, though.
That makes me object.
Okay. So I guess I threw out the idea of having a meeting, and David said he would do it on personal level if we wanted it, ahead of time to kind of give us an overview. How do people feel about that? And then any other discussion?
I guess the other comment I would make is I did like the way we did the budget last year better. I liked having, more raw information presented to us earlier in the year and having a chance for that to ripen some before we came to this cycle of budget meetings. And at a minimum, I would like to see us return to the process that we followed last year. I thought that was a really good, inclusive, and, at the end of the day, the budget cycle's, one of our biggest, experiences for the year, and
It went well
has a big
last year,
impact.
I thought.
And I thought last year flowed really, really well.
It did.
So.
So I guess we haven't come to a conclusion yet. I guess the first thing would be, do we want to have meetings, say, Wednesday of next week for an overview to present things that we should pay attention to when we get to the 5th?
I'm comfortable, but I'd rather not do it on Wednesday.
Oh, okay.
I think this was part of the thing, too. I think in our April agenda meeting, I laid out a schedule, and I asked if this was okay, and I was told, yes, it's okay. I would love to stick to what we currently have if we could. That would be great.
Ex-person myself.
That was kind of the discussion we had at the agenda meeting in April, is why I went ahead and talked about it and got the kind of the thumbs up, is why we're doing it this way. So if we could stick to the current schedule, that'd be great, but we will do whatever the board chooses.
Okay, good point. So I'll revise my suggestion or question. Do we want to have a pre-June 5th meeting on like the Thursday, the 24th, which is also the same day as the KyMEA meeting? That's a problem.
So that isn't going to work.
Yeah, I won't be here.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Okay, it's not looking good for the pre-meeting, so if anyone has questions, maybe they should just go ahead with that. Then the other thing is the idea of switching to Tuesday and Thursday versus Tuesday and Wednesday.
Tuesday and Thursday is better for me. I'm in Louisville every Wednesday, so.
So do we want to vote on who would be interested in switching to Tuesday and Thursday? I would.
Just make a decision.
I can do either. I'm happy
I don't
with either,
know why we need to
yeah.
vote. Just
Yeah, I prefer Tuesday and Thursday, but I can do either.
I can do either.
Okay. So David, I know you had your previous schedule, but I'd like to switch it to Tuesday and Thursday.
Okay.
And if anyone has special requests, to contact you the week before that. And
Yeah.
Katrina will give you whatever dispensation you need to.
I'm not going to be here. I'm going to be on state on Friday and Saturday. That's the problem.
Well, I mean, to whatever you put together on Friday, you can have, you'd be back on Monday, right?
No, she's on vacation.
It's going to be out the next week.
All the next week. Oh.
And what we've done too is we'll be presenting what we've all compiled as your staff to bring to you, and what we think we need to operate the system for the next year. I've not heard any individual board initiatives coming our way, so there's nothing in there.
I have one I want to talk about now.
Okay, it's a good time.
The board retreat. You know, I have a sheet I'll send out to you all. But do we want a facilitator, or do we want someone to talk to us about board governance, or what am I trying to say? Public open records, or do we want it to be somewhere else besides here? All those things cost money. Do we want 1 day or 2 days? So, but I have a sheet that I'll send around, but David probably needs to consider that we need a little money to pay or to eat. Shouldn't say eat, but those kinds of things.
So are you looking at a time frame yet?
Well, that's the other question I had. I have a sheet that I'll send to you. I kind of put my thoughts on a sheet. I'll just send the sheet to you all, and it's just my thoughts.
Okay, well, it sounds like a good starting spot.
So how did we end up? Tuesday and Thursday? Is that how we are?
Yes.
Okay.
1 o'clock, I'm assuming that we're going to stick to the same 1 to 5 schedule.
That's good.
Okay.
So Tuesday and Thursday, 1 o'clock to 5, and then we have all those extra meetings on Wednesday night. But, I'm sorry, Tuesday night. Who knows how long they'll take, but probably pretty good.
Thank you for the definitiveness, Kathy.
Yes, we've got a leader there. Okay.
We don't want anybody to be confused.
So Steve, you're going to send your memo
Yeah, I'll
out?
send you.
Okay, we'll consider that. Any other new and old business?
That's not exactly, oh, sorry.
No, you
Not
go
exactly
ahead.
old and new, but on action item 6 tonight, staff told us that withdrawing it because it insufficient information from KU. I'm confused. Isn't KU required to give us notice of increases in our wholesale rates
I think that's
by a certain date? But they, as I understand, they haven't done that?
That would be our key person there.
They have given us the rate information they usually give us, but we have the question of ash pond cleanup that we've been paying for. Previously, we had agreed, the Frankfort's portion of it was a little over $1 million a year for 3 years to pay that amount. The indications we're getting from KU, again, this is different than the rates, so take this separately, that they are spending considerably less money than they had estimated. So we believe the amount we will be required to pay will go down, possibly significantly. Again, we're trying to feed that into the rate increase. You have one rate increase, one adjustment. Yes. That's the piece that's missing.
Okay.
Next, is it Wednesday afternoon? There'll be a meeting with KU to discuss the rates and that piece. At that time, we should get that particular piece nailed down. Right now, it is looking favorably that we will not have to have a rate increase. But we expect the amount of money that we're paying toward ash pond cleanup to go down. If we maintain it the way it is, I think we'll be able to slide through with probably very little to no rate increase. All that was put together, the agenda item, before we even started to crunch the numbers. So that's the piece we still need to get the final. I really believe we'll probably end up being able to break even, and we will not have to have a rate increase. But I just don't have those final pieces yet. And again, that's the ash pond reason, not the other KU stuff.
Okay. What prompted my concern was that they're just going to put us behind the 8 ball on timing because of regulatory lag to impose our, if there is an increase, to be able to spread it out and come up with our own rates by a date sufficiently early to
Correct, yeah.
to not suffer from regulatory lag.
Correct. The rates would take effect on July 1. And the way we've usually done it in the past is we ask for that public hearing in May, usually around the budget meetings in early June. We do have the public hearing, and then at the regular June meeting, you make your decision on the rates. What we would do this time, even if I believed for sure we were going to have a rate increase, because I won't have that final piece until Wednesday afternoon, we have to have everything to the paper on Wednesday morning for that special meeting on the 5th or 6th or 5th. So no matter what we would do, we would have to back it up a week. So if we determine from the KU stuff we do need a small rate increase, then we will have to have a special meeting probably the next week. And we would have the public hearing then and still give you the ability at the regular board meeting to make your decision post public hearing. That was a little confusing, so we thought just rather than trying to explain all that.
I wasn't thinking fast enough when we passed on that item, so thank you.
That's it.
Yep. So,
I have one little thing.
Yes.
That nobody really is going to want to talk about.
Okay.
I would like to discuss again having the Reed-Smith report made public. I know it's been a controversial item, and I hate bringing up controversy again, but I think that, we're looking at another PPA. We have not been able to discuss the Reed-Smith report amongst ourselves or with KyMEA. So it's basically $50,000 that we've spent for what? And I think we need to be able to discuss it. I think we need to be able to get KyMEA's response to it. And for us to be able to do that, it needs to be public. So I would appreciate it if you all could agree to make the Reed-Smith report public.
James, I had a question there. If it's a discussion about the Reed-Smith report, that can't be done in closed session?
We kicked that around quite a bit and never could come up with a good way to do it, but this has been stagnant for quite a while, so I can't swear to it one way or the other.
Okay.
Not saying it's impossible, but we didn't come up with something when that was originally considered.
Does that change now that, I know you mentioned there was some change in the legislature this last session where we could have a video conference presentation?
Right, there was a motion made or a legislation passed that said you could have videotaping in any meeting.
Yeah.
And it.
Or video conferencing.
Video conferencing, I'm sorry, not videotaping, video conferencing in any meeting, which in the past it said you could not have that in closed session, so we would be able to have a video conference.
Well, I guess my inclination would be if we could figure out, James, what the detail of that was and if that expands our abilities there.
Of course, it hadn't gone into legal effect yet, whatever.
That won't happen until July 14th.
Exactly was passed.
60 days after it was signed or passed by the legislature.
And I've not studied that, so I have no opinion.
Okay.
But you still have to be able to meet the criteria of a closed session, which is litigation, personnel to, blah, blah.
Yeah, I think they're
So
about 12 different things.
which, I don't think the Reed-Smith report fits any of that criteria.
Well, it certainly has proprietary information in it, but I guess I would, defer to James.
Regardless of any of that, good, bad, or indifferent, the board can choose to release it if the board sees fit to do that. If there's a motion made, it'd be.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my position is kind of the recommendation we got from our attorney, which was, there's some strategic advantage to portions of it not being public, and their recommendation was to prepare a public version of it that gave some sense of the document without compromising that strategic advantage, and I think that's still a reasonable thing to pursue, but without some time to deliberate and some sense of guidance from counsel, I'd be hesitant just to.
Well, you're getting to a little bit of apples and oranges. The attorney-client privilege is different from a separate issue from open records, open meetings. It's clearly covered by attorney-client privilege, but the board can choose to waive that. if they see fit to do so. So to me, that's two different questions.
I wasn't trying to limit it to one.
But I agree with the point
Yeah.
that was clearly the direction that we're given. But again, the board can choose whether or not to stick with that. There was a legitimate reason. It was properly covered. It is properly covered, and there's a legitimate reason to do that. But again, the board can waive it if they see fit to do so.
I don't see the point in having a report that we can't discuss.
And I agree, I'd like to discuss it too, but I guess I'd like to take another pass at figuring out how we can do that in a closed session without waiving our attorney-client.
Okay. So, is there anything further?
I don't know that anybody's made a motion, but you certainly have the right to.
Okay, I make a motion that we make the Reed Smith report public.
Is there a second?
I'll second it. I was in favor of doing that in the past, so for a change, I'll be consistent.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay. I think we'll go ahead and call for the vote, Kathy, by member.
Member Mason?
Yes.
Member Ludwig?
Yes.
Member Hale?
Yes.
Member Baldwin?
No, and I guess the comment I would make about the vote is, I'm inclined to follow the advice of counsel.
Member Rosen?
My vote is also no, and that we have good counsel suggesting we not release this. I think it would be a mistake.
3-2, that passes.
Okay. I believe, any other new and old business?
I have I don't know if it's a comment and might be a request, but I'll leave it as a comment at this moment. I don't particularly like bringing new business up that's not on the agenda. And that's nothing against Don, because this has been done before, Don. It's just, you're just not prepared. So to the extent that we have the opportunity to put an action item on the agenda prior to the meeting, I really think those are the only actions we should be taking action on. But again, I've seen others do that, but it just kind of puts you in no man's land as it relates to whether you know anything about it or if you thought about it or whatever. So that's a comment, and y'all can take it however you want, but to bring a new action item on the agenda at the 11th hour of that meeting is a little bit much for me.
Okay. Well, I did look into that a while back, and the regular board meeting is the only time of all meetings that you can actually do that. And I think it gives you flexibility to be able to handle business that has come up or has been rolling around for a while in a reasonable way, following all of the open meetings rules.
Well, I guess for me, again, maybe it's the spirit of having to post the agenda. Do we have to post the agenda? Yeah. The spirit of posting the agenda is so the public knows what's going to be acted upon. Mm-hmm. And this action of bringing an action item at the 11th hour of a meeting tends to violate at least the spirit of that. So it puts me in an uncomfortable position as a board member because I don't know what's getting ready to hit me, and it deprives the public of knowing actually what this board will be doing in a given meeting. So for me, I really think that's a bad practice.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, I think I don't have a particular issue of bringing up new items, but I certainly am.
Action items.
Yeah, exactly what I mean. That was my comment, is that I certainly sympathize with, an item coming up, not having time to deliberate and then taking action on it. And I'm comfortable with new items coming up, but I think it's reasonable if they require further study that that especially in old-to-do business, that they get deferred to do another meeting and have a regular agenda item for them.
I agree with what you're saying, Steve. I just think that along with that, then board members need to be able to request that things be put on the agenda and they be put on the agenda.
I thought we could do that.
Well, I've requested things on the agenda before that have not been put on the agenda, so.
Okay.
Anyhow, I think we want to go slow on coming up with action items at the last minute like that. I mean, I think I pretty much agree. Try to be restrained on the subject, so to speak.
Okay. So if there's no other discussion, we'll go on to item number 19, which is a closed session. And this is, do we have a motion to call a closed session to discuss liquidated damages, that liquidated damages matter, and also...
She's got a different one.
Okay. Okay. A motion to call a closed session pursuant to KRS 61-810-1C to discuss pending proposed litigation regarding cable copyright matter and the FERC transmission matter.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now going into closed session. Thank you.
I move we come out of closed session.
I will do it. A second.
You got it?
Second.
Yeah.
All in favor of coming out of closed session?
Aye.
Aye.
Do we have a motion from the closed session?
Motion to proceed in accordance with the discussion in the closed session and direct board attorney and staff attorney to proceed accordingly.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Do we have a motion to close?
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.